and welcome to the The-Shree-Channel, where the mission is unity in community. My name is Ayesha Suneja, and I'm very happy to announce that we have a wonderful guest with us today. Her name is Gita Vemparala, and she is a divorce and transition coach. So I'd love for us to talk to her a little bit more and get to know who she is and what she does. So welcome, Gita, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Aisha. And I'm very grateful to The-Shree-Channel for creating this platform and enabling meaningful conversations.
Absolutely, I am as well. So tell us a little bit about you. We just want to know, what you do and who you are. So please tell us a little bit more about you.
Sure. I am a certified life coach and with a focus in divorce and transition. I help women through the divorce and transition process because divorce is a transition. So through the divorce and life after, prior to this, I worked in the corporate world for many, many years. The highlight of my corporate experience, and I feel it was very rich, is the environmental work that I did as a hazardous waste program manager. And that became my first love on the professional front. But my life experiences led me to do what I'm doing now. I've done that for many years. Then a time came, and I experienced a very tough divorce. And when I came out on the other side and was reflecting on my journey, it was so difficult. And I said, women it doesn't have to be this difficult, divorce. It is traumatic, but maybe I can help make it just a little easier. I had the support, and I felt this way in spite of the support I had of my family, my parents, who continue to be my rocks, and my brother and sister-in-law. In spite of that, I felt I could have used more support because they have no experience in divorce. So I didn't know anybody who went through divorce and who knew the ins and outs and how to guide me. That's as a result, I'm here today coaching women through the process.
What an incredible journey. And I know a little bit about your past and the history and the success that you had in the corporate world. And I know some of your talents and your gifts, and you could have done anything in your life with the skill set that you have, yet you chose to help women. So tell me a little bit about the why. Like, why do you do what you do?
Yeah. At any point in life, maybe not so much in my younger days, but more so now, what I do, everything I do is supported by a strong why. It is the rough experience that I have been through. And I feel we need to create a sisterhood where women feel that there is community. I can go somewhere. There is a safe place for me to go. Because most women, especially in our culture, in the Indian culture, and I realized this more after I started working. I didn't think culture had such a significant effect on how you go about divorce, how you face divorce, because I had the support. So I did not, the cultural ramifications, I did not really encounter, I feel, in some ways. But I see that women in our culture get isolated, which actually I experience too, from friends and a lot of family also, maybe not your immediate family, but the clients with whom I work, even the immediate family is not supporting them. So they need someone to hold their hand and tell them, yes, I'm here for you. Because even their own family is, in many cases, supporting the husband. You should adjust. Doesn't matter if you've been through 10, 15 years of emotional turmoil and torture. no, yeah, you should adjust. This is your karma for
Mm.
this life. So, so for I feel, yeah, karma is a thing, and I am not a specialist on karma, but taking action is our responsibility. What do we do with what we have been served? Absolutely, we have a choice. So that's where, that's the drive. I want to show to women you have a choice regardless of where you are in life and what you are experiencing in life.
Wow, that's powerful. Because when I was going through a divorce, I remember some family, was supportive, and a lot of family wasn't. And I felt a lot of shame and fear and uncertainty. And then my divorce attorney was very like, yep, we're going to get the divorce, but the family was no. And I had nobody in between to help guide me at all, with two opposite ends. So fear, shame, all these emotions that come up, how do you deal? I mean, you have such a compassionate way of working with women. How do you deal with women that are experiencing fear? What do you do with them?
The first thing I do tell them is, okay, we will not engage in husband bashing,
Mm.
right? I do need to hear their story to understand where they're coming from. But, and their uh, fear of uncertainty is so crippling, they're not able to take action, they're not able to think clearly. So, the way I work with women, I help them calm the anxiety down so they can think clearly. The fear doesn't vanish in a day, but by taking small steps. First, what do you do to bring down your anxiety, sadness, anything that you're going through at that time, which is keeping you stuck? And then what do you do next? So from that place, you make decisions. Take one step at a time. It's like I'm here holding their hand through that process, helping them find the right attorney, because we may have 10 attorneys who are good, but all of them may not be right. So you have to find the right match. So I help them there finding the right attorney. And then also the parenting dynamics. Co-parenting starts even before the divorce is finalized, because a lot of couples are living together during the divorce. So how do you co-parent? How do you shield your children from the negativity? Both parents have a responsibility there. Uh, yeah, and then taking personal responsibility for your care too. Like you put the oxygen. It's not a cliche. As cliche as it sounds, it's important. You put the mask on first, then you'll be able to take care of your children.
Absolutely. And I had, again, during my divorce, I had such a misunderstanding. I thought that all I needed was a divorce attorney. And I was shocked when I realized my divorce attorney had very little interest and usually no time and incredibly high legal fees. And yet I didn't get any of this. No, I didn't get the education. I didn't get the understanding. I didn't get the support. I mean, my attorney was obviously focused on the legal aspect, but you're talking about emotional support. You're talking about, even mental health support, financial support, child rearing support. So that is not something that women get if they hire an attorney. Would you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. And that is one big mistake we make. We rely on the attorney for everything to make decisions for us. No, the attorney is there, as you said, to help us navigate the legal process, legal path. The courts and setting hearing dates and all that, mediation dates, etc. But the preparation, you will need to do the work. You can't put it on the attorney, and the attorney is not there to be a shoulder for you to cry on. The attorney is compassionate. There are compassionate attorneys, but they'd rather, and I learned this from conversations with numerous attorneys, they'd rather you have them focus on the legal process and you seek the emotional support you need outside of that box. And that's where I significantly come in, and I help my clients prepare for meetings with attorneys, because attorneys fees are the biggest expense in divorce. And so with I help them prepare for attorneys meetings, mediation sessions, and figure out all your options so you can intelligently negotiate, right? With knowledge, you can negotiate. It's a negotiation. Once filed, it's a lawsuit and it's a negotiation.
Yeah. And I think we don't realize that, right? You come with such like compassion and kindness, but you also come with a lot of like strategy and education and know-how. Like that combination is so hard to find, especially with someone who has that cultural competency that you do, because, you know, it's a very different thing. Our culture and everything that comes with being in our culture is a completely different mindset. So
Yes.
having that cultural experience, I think, really adds to what you offer.
Yes, and what I have found, and when I started this work, I did not expect it. Yeah, I want to help all women. I still do, going through divorce, but what I have found is um, women of Indian origin, who can relate to the way I look, uh, they feel, okay, she understands, and our culture is very different. Divorce is hard for everyone, right? Man, woman, and doesn't matter what culture you belong to. But the Indian culture it comes with its own challenges. The stigma is so much higher. And then the isolation you experience, because even your loved ones are not supporting you in the process, right? So you're by yourself. So that way, Indian women are able to relate to me. So most of my clients are of Indian origin as a result.
And I think, I wish when I was going through divorce that I had somebody, honestly, to guide me the way that you guide your clients. I think it's such a valuable resource in what you provide. Tell us about maybe one or two takeaways. Women that are watching this episode, what can they take away from what you offer?
There's two big takeaways. One is preparation, which I touched upon earlier. Women generally, we get so entangled on the emotional side. Oh, I don't care, all I want is my children. Of course, children are our first priority, right? I want my children, or I want this to be over. It doesn't matter. I just want it over. No, you prepare, you do the right kind of preparation and understand your rights. So you at least fight for what is rightfully yours. The result, we don't know what the result will be. A lot of it may be out of our hands, but when you go sit for an exam, you do the preparation. Only then there is hope that you'll do well, right? So it's the same thing here. You do the preparation that is needed, and then process your emotions in a different box. And then number two, you'll never think that you have to deal with this alone. It is really, really hard to do things by yourself. If you look at even many successful people, they did not do it without support. Why should you think that you must do this alone by yourself? Get the right support. Get the support of your family and friends. If you don't have it, get the right support. Someone who has been through the experience and who can guide you intelligently, tactically and strategically through the process.
We just want to really thank you and The-Shree-Channel for creating this platform and for giving us the opportunity to help and empower women in meaningful ways. Thank you so much, Gita, for being here.
Thank you, Ayesha. I totally enjoyed the conversation.
Likewise. Thank you and take care.
Namaste, and welcome to the The-Shree-Channel, where our mission is to foster unity in the community by spotlighting people who are making a difference in their unique ways. Today, we have Dr. Ayesha Suneja as our guest. Dr. Ayesha Suneja has a PhD in psychology, and she does coaching and therapy. She specializes in trauma. From here, let's welcome Dr. Suneja. Ayesha, can you tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Gita. Thank you for the lovely intro. And I'm so happy to be here and really appreciate the time that we have together. So what I do, so it's something I call theracoaching. It's kind of a combination of therapy and coaching, where, when you think about therapy, traditional therapy has mostly been talking about your feelings or processing emotions, and it can be a pretty lengthy process. It can go back into childhood, and it sometimes feels like why are we just talking about the, things that have happened without any real movement or action? And with coaching, a lot of times it's very directive, right? We can give people a lot of great goal setting and discuss values and help them to move in the direction of their dreams or move in the direction of maybe more healthy or helpful living strategies, but it doesn't really take into consideration what happened to them in childhood or what they've been through and how those traumas have actually affected them. So we're not really looking at the whole picture. But with theracoaching, what I do is looking both at the past and also really looking forward to the future. So it's more short term, it's more goal oriented, and it's definitely about healing the whole self, mental, emotional, spiritual, and really looking at all aspects of health and wellness.
Oh, that's beautiful, because when we hear about therapy, we hear that people go through 20 years of therapy and they're still in therapy. So that is one thing I feel prevents people from going to therapy in the first place. But what you have shown is, yes, we can shorten the time period while making it effective. Right? They're not just coming to you and talking about their experiences or what happened, their sufferings, their pain, but they're doing something, taking action. Right?
Absolutely.
And they're feeling better too in a shorter time. So that's beautiful. How I'm always curious, how did you get on this path? We have a reason, right? We all have a reason for the path that we choose.
Absolutely. Or the path chooses us, right?
Yes.
It feels like that sometimes. For me, for
Yes.
sure. So I think for me, the reason that I'm on this path is because of my own suffering. I was in my 30s, I was divorced. Again, I had 2 children. I was a single mom. I had no job. I had no education, and I had no future. I had started my undergrad at 18 and I never completed it. And that was a huge source of shame. At the end of my undergrad, I was, going into an arranged marriage, and I thought, well, I don't even need this. What am I going to do with this degree? So I didn't tell anybody, and I never finished the degree. And so again, years later, I find myself ashamed and terrified and alone, and realizing that I have no future because I never completed my education. So I then started realizing, if I'm going to be studying all these books on how to make myself better, why don't I just actually study them instead of just reading them in a bookstore? And so I went on to getting what I consider to be my most difficult degree, which was my undergrad degree. And the reason it was more difficult was not because of the academic difficulty or the material. The difficulty was the shame of being in my 30s, sitting with 18-year-olds getting an undergrad degree. It was the shame of not knowing what a flash drive was or how to open up a PowerPoint slide, because I hadn't done that before. So there was a lot of resistance to go back to school. But I did. I eventually went back and completed my undergrad. And then I got 2 master's degrees, and then I started my PhD, which took me on an entire journey of my own healing and looking back at all of my own issues. And I think that's why a lot of people, or maybe some people in the mental health field or healing professions, it's their own pain that actually gets them on this journey of helping others.
That is so true. That is so true. as a divorce coach myself, I went through divorce, and that's how I found my purpose. I feel
Yeah,
uh,
I see that.
helping women who are going through divorce. And as someone who has experienced it, I absolutely know the pain that you have been through. And I'm sure so many women and the women with whom I work, can relate to your story, where, marriage becomes the goal, right? Marriage,
Mhm.
generally in the Indian community,
Right.
uh, shadi is the goal.
That's
Um,
it.
so you quit school and said, "Oh yeah, my life is made. This is my goal." You may not have thought of it that way,
Right.
but the expectation and that was set. So
Hmm.
I'm sure so many women will relate to your story, and meeting others' expectations too,
Right. Oh,
right? That
absolutely.
our life revolves, it seems like, when we are younger, meeting other people's expectations. We're constantly doing that.
Yeah, so my why is not just helping women kind of get to the other side of whatever they're going through in life. Because I often think that, if I was divorced and had no job, no education, and really was terrified, um, and if I can do it, I know that there's women that are way more, experienced and educated and have so much more going for them in their life. So if I can do it, I know anyone can do it. But I
Mhm.
also want the why for me was it was the suffering that I experienced in between. It was the self-esteem that was affected in between. It was all of the ways that I thought I was broken and I was defective and something was wrong with me. I didn't know that I had anxiety. Even as a child, I was a very anxious child. I had no clue. I just thought something's wrong with me. And so I would hide it and just try to please others and show up for others. But the more I understood as I studied psychology, I realized we all have some of these very common traits where we feel not good enough or not worthy or not lovable or we're afraid or we're anxious. And instead of making this personal defect, why not look at it as, oh, this is actually perhaps part of a disorder that is very,
Mhm.
very easily, and I'm not going to say it's easily healed, but it's very easily diagnosable. It's very easily looked at and said, hey, you're not the only one. There's a lot of people that share this. This is a very, like a lot of human beings suffer through this. And that, first of all, took away the stigma that it's just me and something's wrong with me. It created this community of connection with others where I could share and they could share their stories and their experience with me. So,
Mhm.
my why is for any woman out there that's actually feeling that something is wrong with her personally, or that she's broken or defective or not valuable, not lovable. I want to completely just, have them have a breakthrough with that and realize you're not alone. It's not you. It could be conditioning of our childhood. It could be conditioning of society. It could be the way that we grew up, the environment that we were in. It's certainly not a personal thing, and it's much more of a societal and collective issue.
Yes, yes. Very, very eloquently put there.
Thank
So
you.
I know you and I have known each other for some time now. You are a trauma, you specialize in trauma. Uh, when a client comes to you, they probably are not thinking, oh, it's trauma that I'm feeling. I'm sure I have a feeling they're not labeling it that way. So how do you help? Can you give me an example, maybe a simple example, not big trauma, like,
Mm.
oh, I had this shock in my life, big event in my life. So then I know it's obvious, right? You get traumatized from that big event. But something so simple and unsuspecting, because as an adult, let me say, she might not know that that is what's bothering her, something that happened in her childhood or in her younger days. So can you give us an example of how trauma could come up or someone could be traumatized?
Yeah, absolutely. So, first of all, let's just talk what trauma is. And I love the way you said we all can recognize the big traumas, right? The big devastating traumas. Those are, we don't really have to say much because we know that's a traumatic experience. But we're
Right.
talking about, I call it the invisible traumas, because there's so many things that have happened to us in our life. And even if we have the best parents, we still have to go to school. And there's teachers and classmates, and there's society at large. And now there's media, and there's other people making comments, and there's the workplace. There's just so much that we have to go through. But let's look at what the definition of trauma really is. Trauma is when you have an unbearable emotional experience and you're alone in it. And that's it. So something that's unbearable and you are alone. Now, if it is bearable, you will get through it. If you have someone with you and it's unbearable who is compassionate, you will get through it. So it's not always that every situation will create trauma. But if I can, maybe I can give you a really quick example of my childhood, one of the experiences I had. So I had this dog that I absolutely loved. I was about 11 years old. And we went away on a little trip and we left the dog with a neighbor. And when we came back, I found out a few days later that the dog had died. The dog had gotten out of the house and was killed by a car. So when my mother told me, I immediately broke out crying. And my mother tried to stop me from crying by saying, "It's okay, koi baat nahi, rote nahi hai, rote nahi hai." Very typical Indian maternal way. You know, she was a great mom. She just didn't know that in that moment, what I probably needed was some compassion or needed some connection, which was that she would be sad. And when I didn't stop crying, she got really angry. And so here I am, child crying. I look up, my mother's angry. My dad, my sister are laughing because they thought I was overreacting. And immediately I pushed down that emotion of grief, of loss, and its place. So this is what we do with emotions oftentimes when we have trauma. We have a core emotion, and there's just about 7 core emotions. So when I pushed down some of my sadness and grief and loss, what came in place of it was shame. I'm now ashamed to share my emotions with people. So then I went into the bathroom and I turned on the water and I cried privately so that no one could hear me. Now I started hiding. Then after that, when I came back out, if I was still upset, my mother would be angry. So I started smiling and acting like I wasn't sad, which then led to people pleasing. So then I saw my sister and dad laughing at me, and that started affecting my self-esteem. And so instead of that, I became defensive and angry. So if you start looking at all these things that happen because of one small trauma that wasn't dealt with in a way that I could process that sadness, maybe for a day or 2 or 3, I could feel some of that grief, and then naturally it would leave my body. It would come and go in waves as I got older, but it wouldn't become repressed and it wouldn't become replaced with these really unhealthy defenses.
Oh my, you know, you wouldn't even think about how things can affect you in the
Yes.
long run.
So when we think about what results from trauma, it would be things like depression, anxiety, addiction, anger, relationship issues, people pleasing, codependency, no boundaries. I mean, the list goes on and on. So we might say we don't have trauma, but if we look at the symptoms that are showing up in our life, we might have to explore that a little bit further. So the good news is, because our brains are malleable, we can actually heal the experiences we've had. We can feel the emotions that have been repressed. We can actually watch some of those emotions leave our body, because as much as our minds can repress emotions, the part of you that will never forget what you went through is your body. Your body stores trauma, which is what creates all of these maladaptive symptoms. And I just think, you know, we've come to a time now where we are no longer happy going to the doctor and just treating our symptoms. We're now looking for the root cause. We're looking for the infection that's causing these symptoms to keep reoccurring. And I think as a society, more and more people are ready to get to the root cause and actually pull it by the root and heal it once and for all. And I think that's where we're at.
Yes, the time has come for that, and it's happening. It's a movement
Happening.
now.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yes.
And I'm excited. I'm excited for women that are listening to also join that movement, because, the more we heal ourselves, the more we can help others. And I think that's been kind of my life journey. I really couldn't help anybody because I was in a ditch myself. And so to heal myself was the first priority. And then after
Mhm.
that, I could then be of service.
It was such a pleasure chatting with you, Dr.
Likewise.
Ayesha Suneja.
Likewise, Geeta. Always a pleasure talking to you. Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you. And I thank Shree Channel again for making this platform available for conversations such as this.